With a top pro wrestling star now officially a free agent and more, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. On WWE's The Bump, Finn Balor was asked about adding new members to the Judgement Day as he revealed, "We are always planning. The Judgement Day are always planning. We're always plotting. We're always scheming. I'm always texting with Damian. We have a group chat with me, Damian, Rhea, Dom. We're plotting. We're figuring things out. And trust me, once we get Mania behind us, the Judgement Day will be expanding." Talking to the Generation Iron Fitness Network, Paul White recalled an interaction between him and The Undertaker saying, "I went to him one time in '99, and I did the same thing that every young guy does. Did you see anything maybe I can change or work on? Is there anything I can improve on? I just wanted him to pat me on the back and say, 'No kid, you're doing great,' because that's what your mentality is." Taker looked at me, he goes, "Yeah, I got some advice. I think you should take 2 weeks off and quit the business." And he walked off. For a sit-down with Chris Van Vliet, Bully Ray had this to say about Kevin Owens and his run so far in WWE. "I'm just saying if you're good at what you do, people can relate to all shapes and sizes. Kevin Owens, I don't think Kevin knows anybody named Jim, let alone go to one. But he doesn't have to. I don't want Kevin Owens to go to the gym. I don't want Kevin Owens to tan. Because the Kevin Owens that got over and works to the degree that he works, main eventing one night of WrestleMania against Stone Cold Steve Austin, he didn't need to go to a gym and didn't have to tan. So don't start now." For that same interview, Bully Ray said this about Vince McMahon's booking being a reason for him not re-signing with WWE. "I told Vince I couldn't do the Dudley thing the way he wanted it. We did it for a year. Vince sat me and Devon and said, 'Here's what I want you to do. Work with the New Day, help them get over. Work with the Usos, help them get over. Work with the Wyatts, help them get over. And then whoever else we throw at you. Okay, you got it, no problem.' The boss sat us down. This is how much he's paying us. This is what he needs. You got it? But after a year of doing it, okay, I'm burned out on the Dudleys and I know I got Bully Ray in my back pocket. I told Devon up front, I don't think I'm going to re-sign. So we knew all this. He re-signed and became a producer with the company, an employee with the company. And just recently, they parted ways and Devon had a great career there as a producer and did very well there." On his Something to Wrestle podcast, Bruce Pritchard mentioned that WWE considered buying Playboy. "We were winding down the Playboy Association, and again, we were in transition. We were transitioning to a more PG-themed product, but there was a point in time where we were negotiating to actually purchase Playboy. That was an interesting time as well. I think that any time that you can be on newsstands in front of the public, whether they bought it or not, when you would walk by a newsstand, you would see your stars on the cover. Whether they bought it or not, they saw those stars on the cover of Playboy, and that was like, oh hey, wow, that's a huge celebrity." When talking about possibly returning to the ring, Wade Barrett told the Daily Star, "I'm not ruling it out. Maybe one day it will happen. I'd be surprised if I ever got to a point where I wanted to do it full time like a Sheamus or a Drew McIntyre is still doing it. But on a part-time basis or a spot match, if the storyline made sense, it's not something I'd rule out. In terms of my future within the industry, I 100% see it in commentary." Speaking to Inside the Ropes, Dax Harwood talked about his time working for both AEW President Tony Khan and WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, saying, "Comparing and contrasting Vince and Tony, there's so much that they are alike with, but there's so many things they're also different with. Vince McMahon was not a huge fan of us aesthetically. He loved our work. He would tell us all the time he loved our work. On the flip side, you've got Tony Khan, a man who's obviously successful in his business ventures, just as maybe more hardworking than Vince because he's got AEW, he's got the soccer league, he's got the Jaguars. I don't know if he ever sleeps, but he is so hardworking and so passionate. But you know, there are also some things that I don't agree with there as well. Sticking with Dax Harwood, he would take to his podcast to note how AEW did not congratulate FTR despite them winning Feud of the Year in 2022. Yeah, I did feel slighted, I can't lie. I mean, yeah, it was just because we worked so hard last year. We did, with what I feel was not the best content, not the best effort, to maximize our momentum from last year. I feel we did our best to make everything work, and for them not to acknowledge us really did hurt me a bit. When questioned by his co-host if his cryptic tweets were a part of a work to create bad blood with AEW, Dax responded, "No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No way. I was legitimately a crybaby. I screenshotted every award that they had posted. I had a feeling we weren't going to get mentioned because, like I said, we have reached out and said, hey, we will come back and work until our contracts are up. We're okay with it. We took a couple of months off to let our bodies heal, to think about what we wanted to do. So we've made it known that we will gladly come back at the very least until our contracts are up or until we can come to some middle ground or not and leave. But I haven't necessarily heard anything back. I had a feeling they were not very happy with us." Providing more details on the recently reported arrest of Sonya Deville, Ringside News wrote, Sonya Deville was arrested on February 19th on a firearms charge, and it took a while for us to hear about it. It turns out this was a secret they had within WWE from the day after, because Creative was informed right away. With Jeff Hardy's DUI case in Florida being closed following his arrest last year, his brother Matt said this on his Extreme Life podcast about him returning to AEW. That hasn't been talked about. Will it happen? Maybe, maybe not. That isn't something that hasn't been talked about at all at this point, and it certainly wasn't going to be like his court case is done, he shows back up on AEW Dynamite. During an interview with Fox Sports AU, Britt Baker touched on her current role in AEW, noting that, right now, I'm not having weekly matches. I'm not having weekly promos, so it's a little bit backed off. I try not to bother him and bug him because there are hundreds of other wrestlers texting him on a daily basis, I'm sure. But for example, when I was champion, I was texting with Tony Khan several times a week with different ideas, and he was sending me his ideas, and he's very straight up with me. He'd tell me, Britt, that's not a good idea, I don't like that, or hey, let's make this better. And I really appreciate that from my boss. Honesty is one of the most helpful tools anyone can ever give you when you're learning your craft, especially when you're learning TV professional wrestling. I couldn't ask for a better boss than Tony Khan, and he's helped me so much growing as a performer, as a wrestler, as a human being. He's really a special guy, and we're lucky to work for him. Speaking to the New York Post about Mercedes Mone potentially making her way to AEW, Britt Baker said, "It's weird to see now that she's out in the wild. She's not completely inaccessible in a way. These are very realistic matchups that could happen, and I think the world is ready to see Mercedes Mone let out of the cage. What is she going to do now? I hope and pray that someday we see her in some capacity in AEW, and if by chance I could be in the connection too, I would be very, very for that." Talking about how Vince McMahon is looking to sell WWE for about $9 billion, Hall of Famer Kevin Nash said this on his Click This podcast. "It's almost like I have no intention of selling my house, but if someone called me up and said, I'll give you $3.5 million, I'm selling my house, but if you give me market value for it, it's like, nah man." Nash thinks that McMahon is simply trying to get enough money to make the ordeal of turning the company over to outside ownership worth it. Of course, recently, Endeavor shot down the idea of buying the company, as previously Comcast, who were thought to be the favorite to purchase WWE, said they would more than likely not be interested. Speaking of possible buyers for WWE, Dave Meltzer noted this on Wrestling Observer Radio about AEW president Tony Khan buying the company. Tony Khan has expressed interest, but for him to get it, he'd have to take in a lot of partners to get it, which is not out of the realms of possibility. They could put together a giant deal, but aside from that, the Saudis and the Khan family, nobody else has publicly expressed interest in buying it, and the prices, in theory, the price is very high. They threw that $9 billion figure out. Unless the Saudis have pretty much agreed to go with $9 billion, which is a very highly inflated figure that I don't think anybody else would meet, then that's probably where it's gonna go. Also on Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer said this about a discussed match for WrestleMania between Brock Lesnar and Bray Wyatt. Brock Lesnar, this was also not the original idea, but it was an idea. One of the ideas was Brock Lesnar versus Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania, and Brock said no to that one, which doesn't surprise me in the least. Following a health scare, former ECW and WWE star Stevie Richards is out of the hospital and is back at home.
So as you can see, I've been discharged from the hospital. We got discharged yesterday afternoon. So thankful and grateful to be back home. The past 4 to 5 weeks have been, saying rough is an understatement, but I thank each and every one of you for the prayers, the well wishes, positive vibes, and just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. It's going to be a mix between different types of content when I'm able to. Right now I'm not able to edit or do anything for the channel, but when I do, this Road to Recovery will be a playlist, a dedicated one on the YouTube channel. And also there's 8 to 10 videos in the queue when I was out there at Force USA. So it's going to seem kind of weird for a little while, but please bear with me, and I'm going to document every step of my recovery. Thank you guys. God bless you. Have a great day.
With Jay White having been rumored to be leaving New Japan for some time, the Super J podcast has confirmed that Switchblade, who has interest from WWE and AEW, is a free agent. Per sources, Jay White's contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling has expired and he is set to leave the company. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.